Thank you so much for agreeing to join us today. This is a topic that I think is going to be watched many, 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 many times, and hopefully will bring lots of clarity to many people. So I'm going to hand over to you, and thank you very, very much.
Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about, is menopause brain fog holding you back from growing your business? And of course, what to do about it. My name is Elsa Hitchens, and I'm a registered nutritional therapist and health coach. And my business is called Food Fabulous. So if you want to follow me on Instagram, you'll find me at Food Fabulous Nutrition. And my area of expertise is in perimenopause, menopause, and in metabolic health. So, what happens to our bodies at this stage? And if you're joining today, whether you're with me live or you're watching the replay, then you probably worked out that a load of stuff happens and not all of it good at this stage of life. So I'm going to just walk you through why that's happening and some of the things that you can do to get you feeling like you're firing on all cylinders again. So we all know that about the hot flushes and things like that, but actually in terms of energy and in terms of brain fog, forgetfulness, anxiety, and mood, there's all of those kind of changes can be really debilitating when it comes to running your business, because it's not just unlike your friends and family who might just go out and do their job and they go out at this time and they come back at that time. When you're running your own business, you're doing all the jobs. You know, you are the person on the ground, but you're also the person who is the chief marketing officer, the chief operating officer, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot on your plate. So we're going to look at, why it is that you can feel so bare and drained. And I'm going to be talking about, because it would be weird if I didn't, as a nutritionist, strategic changes to your diet. So what I mean by strategic changes is often people just want to know what the thing is that they can eat. If I just eat enough grapes, then everything will be better. That's not the answer. So unfortunately, you can't just do specific things, but you will get, by making some strategic changes, a massive shift in a couple of weeks. And that's from, if you follow on with some of the things that I'm going to suggest today, and I've got a free ebook that you can, it's a QR code and you can download that, then it sort of brings all of the themes together. So it's completely within you to be feeling like a really nice, shiny, vitalized version of yourself. If you've got questions as we go through this on the Zoom, you can just type those into the chat box and I will get to you later. So having said, there are no magic foods. There are a few foods which can really help. But I also want to talk, so the food is going to make the biggest difference to every aspect of menopause, particularly in terms of energy and flushes, and there's a lot that really helps with mood. But interestingly as well, and it took me quite a long time to figure out for myself, that stress relief and the nervous system work, just feeling calm, feeling confident, feeling sharp and clear, that comes in part from stress relief, self-care. I'm going to be talking as well, I don't have a slide on it, so Louise and I were just talking about what happens with one of the main feel-good neurotransmitters, which is dopamine. So why is it that so many women get in those menopause years, they get in their perimenopause journey, and suddenly the ADHD diagnoses are coming hard and fast? And why is it that you feel like you need to have more wine in perimenopause? So I will cover that as well, because it's the whole how the brain works and our brain chemicals are absolutely fascinating. So I'll be looking at also how to get a better night's sleep, because we all know that if you don't get a good night's sleep, obviously you're tired, but other things happen as well. It's sort of the tipping points where this one thing happens, or if it doesn't happen, everything comes down like a bunch of dominoes. So we want to make sure how we can, even though in perimenopause, it can be a bit of a challenge, how we can get a better night's sleep. So oftentimes people think that this is a terrible point of your life, a terrible point in your health, that everything needs to be rubbish. And actually, although many women feel a bit bare, whether it's, they're bothered by their symptoms or just how it feels to be them, it doesn't have to be awful. And what you're going to learn from me today hopefully will make you feel a lot better. So we are hormone soup. So what's happening inside? Quick science lesson, but bear with me. So your estrogen levels are falling. They're not falling, we think falling like this. The trend is downwards, but it's very much like a spluttering car. And this is why sometimes, particularly in relation to your menstrual cycle, sometimes it's normal, sometimes it's very light, sometimes it's like you've been killed in your bed, sometimes it's completely absent for a cycle. And this is this hesitant, intermittent output. At the same time, your testosterone declines, and this is one of the things that we think of. It's the male hormone, but we all need a little bit of testosterone. So it's the one that has you feeling perhaps more confident and assertive. And one of the interesting things is that progesterone falls off a cliff. So the two main lady hormones are our estrogen and progesterone. Estrogen is by and large going like this. Progesterone has just disappeared. And really, it's not how much of this one or how much of that one. It's how much of all of these ones have we got in relation to each other, because it's the ratio that gets affected. And this is why things can feel so tricky. So it's not the finite amount of how much estrogen you've got, because women coming into puberty, they may only have small amounts, but it's how they relate to each other. So if I tell you that progesterone is the one that is the calming hormone, that goes some way to explaining why. So just briefly on that, I will be talking about the neurotransmitters later, but everything goes down a bit of a pathway. So progesterone, we've got less of it, and that ultimately turns into something called alope. Don't worry, there won't be a test, but think of that. That's a calming pathway. So suddenly, if we've not got progesterone, because why? Because we're in perimenopause, we can't ever feel that calm. And the calm right at the end of that is something called GABA. And the best way I can describe GABA is that, when you have a glass of wine, that's GABA. And we can't get to that point if we haven't got enough progesterone. So that's why women tend to chase the glasses of wine, but it doesn't really work like that, because after one, we never get more of it. You never, 2 glasses of wine doesn't give you more of that GABA. And the solution actually is in rosemary and lemon balm. So they're both herbs that you can put in, you can put rosemary in your pocket and just smell the oils. You can just get more of that into your cooking. But back to the hormone story. So the other thing that happens, which can leave you just feeling really drained, is thyroid. So thyroid is like a gland. It's a hormone gland here. And at times of massive hormonal storm and emotional storm, so think childbirth, pregnancy, and also perimenopause, at times of this massive hormonal storm, it can just get knocked out. And the thyroid is your body's internal motor. So it is the speed at which everything happens. So if you imagine, it's more normal for everything to be on go slow. And if you can imagine, you've got a record playing slowly, your mood gets affected, how, you get constipated, your energy is low, and everything just feels, And very similar things happen in terms of thyroid and perimenopause symptoms. There's lots and lots of crossovers. So if you're in any kind of conversation about why do I feel so rubbish and you're at the GP, you should always ask them to run a thyroid test as well, because it could be that you're absolutely fine, but because there is so much crossover and because it does really affect your energy and clarity of thought and your mood, it could be one or the other, it could be both. And another really, really important thing to know is about cortisol. So cortisol is one of the main stress hormones. And we make cortisol in our adrenal glands. Again, there's not going to be a test on this, but I want to give you really compelling evidence for you need to really ramp up the self-care like it's an actual project, because it really does matter. We can't just get away with not taking care of our emotional well-being, not taking a load off and taking care of stress at this stage. So our body needs to make cortisol. It's an important hormone for, we want it in the morning to make us feel as though we're ready to tackle the day. But the adrenal glands also take over making estrogen in times of, basically when your ovaries are not making the estrogen because you're in perimenopause or postmenopause, your adrenal glands pick up the pace. But if they're so fixed on their only job is making cortisol, then it's going to knock all of your hormones a little bit out. Now, the other thing that cortisol does, and I've got a slide on this later, is it really knocks out melatonin. And melatonin, we think of it as the stress hormone. It doesn't stop you falling asleep, just in case you're one of those people who, drop off to sleep like this. But what it does is it facilitates a really good quality sleep. So it's not just the geography being in bed, and it's not how much sleep you get. It's all of the things, including the quality of the sleep that you get. So when I'm working with people in clinic, we're looking at all the things, and I'm going to pick out just a couple of things that I want to focus on today, because otherwise we'd be here for a long time. So the main thing is about your metabolic health. So what happens to your metabolism, what happens to your blood sugar balance. And you might not even be thinking about this if you think, well, I don't know, I've not got diabetes or pre-diabetes, I don't even eat lots of sugar. I'm going to talk to you a bit about why that is the central thing for health, because what we're doing in the menopause years is we're not just trying to fix ourselves up and feel better for now so that we can do all the things that we need to do in our business and with our family and spinning all those plates, but we're actually creating the health that we want for ourselves in the next few decades. So there's a lot riding on slowly doing little bits and pieces to try and improve things, because this is how we create healthy habits. What I don't expect you to do, having listened to me today, is go and revolutionize your whole life, but I want you to be listening out for somewhere to start, because this is how we create healthy habits. We do a thing, it's a small thing, it may not fix the whole problem, and we do that, and we suddenly get, oh, that wasn't so bad. I'm okay at doing that. And we do that reliably until it just feels normal. And then we can take on another thing. So it isn't a race. How we get things into our life regularly is by doing something and repeating it over and over. And we can't do that if we're working on 15 different things. So I want you to be listening out for somewhere that feels maybe the easiest place to start. It's the low-hanging fruit, or it feels maybe it's the most urgent place to start. So detoxification of hormones is important, particularly if you're somebody who, fibroids, endometriosis, always have problems. Maybe you're the kind of person that's just very reactive to all kinds of different things. It could be a detoxification issue. Digestive health, that kind of gets a bit more complicated in this second spring. So I haven't got the time to focus on all of those things, but we're going to be looking at blood sugar and nervous system stress and sleep, because they are the most important. So this is probably the most significant diagram that you will see in a long time. It's very oversimplistic, but I think that's a good thing. So what we want is we want to stay in the middle of these dotted lines. So when we eat things, our body doesn't know, oh, cheeseburger and fries and lettuce and broccoli. It only recognizes, without discrimination, fat has no impact on blood sugar, protein has a bit of impact, and sugars. So whether it's a piece of broccoli, whether it's a plate of new potatoes, a plate of fries, or a bowl of veggies, it still ultimately gets turned into glucose or sugars in the blood. So what we want to do is, and I'm going to teach you how to eat in such a way that we don't have these spikes. And the reason why we care is the body only wants what amounts to a teaspoon of sugar at any one time. So we want to just slow the curve. We don't want to have these peaks. If you go out and you have a weekend and it's your birthday and you've had all the cake and all the sweets and all the Prosecco, that's just a weekend. What we're thinking about is trying to get this steadier flow more of the time than not. And the reason is this: the more your blood sugars go up and down, the more hot flushes you'll have, because hot flushes are linked to the body having to make lots of insulin. Insulin's job is to take the sugar out of the blood. So in order to be feeling really on an even keel with your energy, with mental clarity, is we don't want to have spikes. And we get spikes by having too much of the stuff that quickly turns to sugars, because the body has to take it out. And when it takes it out, then there's nothing there. And it's never saying, oh, by the way, why don't you, Louise, why don't you go and have an apple and some cheese? It's going, no, get the Mars bars or get the crisps. And this is where it's in the low points that you get cravings, that you feel hangry, you feel irritable, and you just feel a bit meh. So then you don't always make the best decisions, and you can end up having a pattern of going up and down and up and down. So what we want to do is we just want to even things out a bit. And how do we do that? We need to do it because the declining estrogen affects effectively your tolerance to starchy foods, like all the starchy carbs like potatoes and rice and pasta and sugars. And it's not that you can't have these things, because the quickest way to be yo-yo dieting all over the place is to have the good and bad. There's no food that is inherently good. Well, actually, there are some very good foods, but there's no food that is inherently bad. So this balance between estrogen and insulin is where it's at for just feeling great. So it's not just about weight, but it's like feeling that clarity that you need and the energy that you need to perform at your best. And by that, I mean run your business. I don't mean, be running a marathon. So there are some pretty straightforward rules. I'm doing it in the funny little inverted commas because nothing's illegal, but more time than not, you want to be thinking veggies, filling up on colorful veggies. The reason why we want color is, apart from vitamins and minerals, all the different colors have got all kinds of different plant chemicals in, and they are anti-inflammatory phytonutrients. They're the kind of thing that you could open up the Daily Mail and find that lycopene, eat more tomatoes because it will save your life, or resveratrol, red grapes, red wine and red grapes, have that because it's going to protect your heart. So it's all of those, they're all color coded, and you don't really need to know what they're called. The couple of things you need to know: one is they work synergistically, so having more colors rather than focusing on just one color or two colors is always better, because they work as an orchestra rather than just solos. And the other thing to know is they're very anti-inflammatory. And perimenopause is a very inflammatory time. So inflammation in the body, the joints, and also to an extent, the brain. So we want to really calm the farm with inflammation. Now, just as an aside, one of the big deals as we go on through health for women is cardiovascular disease and Alzheimer's disease. Many, many more women will have Alzheimer's than men. It's just a thing. Now, estrogen is protective for both of those things, but they're both linked to insulin. They're both linked to lack of sensitivity to insulin. So eating in the way that I'm going to describe becomes really, really important. They're also both linked to inflammation. So having an anti-inflammatory diet, which is healthy fats, so hopping over to the bit on fat. Unfortunately, fat in the English language is the same, the fat that we eat, and the same that, the fat that might congregate in places that we don't want. But some fats are really anti-inflammatory, like omega-3s, which are found in oily fish and flax seeds and veggies. So we want to definitely have those in our diet. The other thing we want to make sure is that we have protein, like a palm-size amount of fish, meat, 3 eggs, or a palm and a half size amount of tofu, or nuts and seeds like mixed together. So they're the key things that need to be in our diet. And we just need to think carefully, or more carefully, about the quality, so what type, and the quantity of the starchy food. So could we go for a whole grain version rather than white? Now, the reason why this is so is that when it comes to veggies, the fiber in the veggies slow down how quickly any of the starches, any of the sugars end up in your bloodstream. It also fills you up. And some people genetically are more programmed to not feel full. They have a lack of sensitivity to a hormone called leptin, just the way it is. And it activates, the fiber activates this satiety hormone. It also makes you regular. I think we all know what I'm talking about here, but it makes logical sense and it is really important. One of the main routes of detoxification is going to a poo, doing a poo. So when we have more fiber, it makes that happen. So we need to get rid of the junk so it doesn't keep recirculating. So that is going to the loo every day. Also mops up any excess hormones. And it's not, you might be thinking, but don't I want more estrogen? We just don't want we don't want things to be out of whack. I mentioned the plant nutrients before. So salads, leafy greens, the veggies that grow above the ground, ideally just are a little bit more starchy, anything goes. So the protein, if anyone's heard of, you know, the lady who is the glucose goddess, she talks about eating your veggies first, forms a fibrous mesh. So whatever comes afterwards hits the bloodstream at a slower pace. And it's true. So next we talk about having the protein. So that along with the veggies also slows down how quickly sugars end up in your bloodstream. So it could be dairy. So when it comes to dairy, really the only ones worth considering are cottage cheese and Greek yogurt. Full fat. Please don't have the 0% fat. We like a seesaw in nutrition. And where they take fat out of something where it's naturally present, they nearly always put sugars in. And just in the case of dairy, they don't have to say if they've added more milk sugar because it's naturally present. So if you want to feel fuller for longer and feel more energized generally, we do want to make sure that we still have fat in our diet. So it's not that we can't have any of these starchy foods, but over time, we tend to rely on them as people, as society, we tend to eat many more of the starchy foods and sugars. So starchy foods like potatoes, rice, pasta, couscous, and things like that, bread, they are effectively sugar because your body can't distinguish. So they behave like sugar. Even the pastries and things like that, they cause the same spikes and dips as sugars. And what's interesting is if you get a dip in the night, if you are the person who wakes up in the middle of the night about 2 or 3 o'clock, this could be why when you have a dip, how your body gets stored sugar, it breaks into your fat cells. And, you might think this is a good idea, but the mechanism by which it knows to do this is, oh, there's no sugars in the blood and there's none in the muscles. We've worn all of that down. So now we're going to send in the stress hormone cortisol. Boom, we're going to get in, get that fat and we're going to crack it open. But you can imagine if you're sleeping, how unhelpful that is. So we want to just have this nice, steady supply. So if you wake up in the night, in the middle of the night, I'm betting that it is a blood sugar issue. So healthy fats are particularly good for your hormones, for your heart, for your joints, and the ones that we want contain omega-3. So that's in all types of oily fish. It's also in flax seeds and chia seeds in particular, and some nuts like walnuts. But things like olive oil and avocados have both been linked to longevity. So having a longer, healthier life. And I mentioned there are some specific foods. So just having these on their own isn't going to be nearly as effective as thinking, where's the protein? Fill up on veggies, healthy fats, easy on the starchy foods. But phytoestrogens are very clever. They're adaptogens, so they adapt to what your body needs. So you can give them to your partner or your husband. They're not going to grow boobies, but they're really weak sources of estrogen, so that they can excuse me, they can give or take depending on what your body needs. And you'll find them in various different types of foods, but the two biggest sources where you'll get the most for the amount that you eat is in flax seeds, which you can sprinkle on porridge or salads or soups, chuck them in baking, or anything with soybeans. So not the milk, but the tofu, miso, and tempeh. So miso, you can buy it as a soup, you can buy it as a paste and add it to stews, and it just has that sort of slightly saltiness. Or tofu, I invite you to have a play with it. So it is in other things like broccoli and cauliflower. Broccoli and cauliflower, particularly broccoli, could be the answer to world peace. And the little crest stuff that you can see on the video, that is an alfalfa. So I'm just going to, I realise I haven't got very long because I do want to go, I do want to say something about the nervous system. So the golden rule, super quickly on food, ideally 3 meals a day and no snacks so your body gets a chance to rest. Salads and non-starchy veggies, protein at every meal, whole foods, ideally, as unprocessed as you can manage, but don't be weird about having a jar of sauce once a week if you need to. You don't have to be doing this the way that I've described 100% of the time. The starchy foods, you will feel much clearer. Your brain will feel much less foggy if you dial down those starchy foods. Eggs, particularly, brilliant for the brain. Berries, also very good. Eggs contain something called choline, which is hardly found in anything else and really, really good for the brain. Healthy fats from nuts and seeds and olives. And I'm just going to say this really quickly in the hope that you don't just hate me and stop listening. Alcohol is really not great in perimenopause because it has a deleterious effect on your sleep. So it wrecks your sleep. And caffeine, do have it in the morning. So don't have it in the afternoon time, because even if it doesn't feel like it's a thing for you, it will be interfering with your sleep. Fizzy drinks, the sodas or the diet sodas, Diet Coke, Diet Pepsi, that kind of thing, or the full fat ones, not that they have fat in, the sugar ones, are both, they're going to still mess up your blood glucose control, even the sugar-free ones. So I want to move on to stress, because this is so important for women of a certain age, because women feel the effects of stress more than men, full stop. That's why there are more women with autoimmune conditions. And women are also, unfortunately, more affected by a poor diet, which can in and of itself be a source of stress. So what that means is take this as your sign to helicopter out and look at what needs to happen to dial down stress in your life. So I mentioned the reasons why. It's to do with the declining levels of estrogen. So we want to make sure that we're really on it, because this is now the time to relax. And when I'm working with my private clients, mostly, in fact, occasionally we do start with the nervous system work, because that then has such a big knock-on effect. Mostly we start with food, but it is a vital part of feeling great. And you'll probably recognize, I'm a person I run my own business as well. And when you're doing all the jobs, it's very difficult to switch off. But at this stage of life, I really invite you to put things in the diary like they were an actual appointment. And one of the reasons is this. So we've got one of the lines is, again, this is a bit of a squiggle, but cortisol, the stress hormone, melatonin, best quality sleep, they're opposing. So we want cortisol in the morning to feel wide awake, and we want it to dip at night, and we have it nice and high in the morning. Daylight, getting daylight in our eyes, really, really good for stress control, doing what your body naturally wants to do. And then we want, linked to the dark, we want melatonin to gradually start increasing so it's nice and high in the middle of the night and we're having our best sleep. So, how do we do this? This is a whistle stop tour of the main points. If you can get outside as soon as it's daylight, even if you've got a big dry robe on and you're having a cup of tea outside, head out the window if it's pouring with rain, morning daylight is really important for regulating calm. If you are a person who likes fasting, don't do too much of that. And ideally, you want to have breakfast within an hour of waking. And this is because cortisol levels, we want them high, but we don't want them through the roof. So save the black coffee and the caffeine until after you've had breakfast, ideally. So with breakfast, but not before. Another weird thing is, you know, when you see these people with the red lights, the red glasses or the orange glasses, what it's doing is it's blocking blue light. So this path to increasing melatonin and regulating the stress side of our nervous system is we need to, and it's difficult. It's harder in winter when things are dark, but we want to have dimmer lights. We don't want to be having the bright light as it's darker, because it interferes with that natural wind down. So evening is wind down. Now, I did say I'd say something about dopamine. I'm conscious about time. I have gone a little bit over, so apologies for me for that. We want to be dimming light so our eyes are feeding back to our body this natural calm. Another thing that we don't want to do is we don't want to do too much scrolling. And it's not about, people will say to me, oh, but I've got the thing on my phone that makes it the red light, so it makes it, less of that blue light. This is an important thing to know about midlife. The gene that is responsible for detoxifying estrogen, once it doesn't have estrogen to detoxify, because remember, our estrogen levels are up and down, but by and large they're trending low as we go through midlife and menopause. That needs to be busy. When it hasn't got the estrogen work to do, it's chucking out other neurotransmitters. So it can be chucking out serotonin, the feel-good hormone. It can also be, so that's the happy hormone, serotonin. Another one of the feel-good hormones that we can end up chasing is dopamine. So it can end up ditching the dopamine. Now, this is exactly why more women in midlife, suddenly everyone's there with their ADHD diagnosis, because estrogen is very protective. So when that isn't there, it then exposes problems with dopamine. So common with ADHD, and just if you feel that, you're chasing something, you're not quite getting to it. Lack of dopamine can result in drinking too much, smoking too much, eating too much, because you're just trying to get the thing, but you're never quite reaching it. So the very, very worst thing that you can do for that is it starts in the morning. So if this is you and you recognize, oh, I'm a little bit like that, just seeking, never quite getting it, procrastinating, wasting large chunks of your day. It used to be me, by the way, so I'm not saying this with any judgment at all. And some people are genetically not very good in this department. Again, me. The worst thing that you can do is start your morning with being on your phone. And I work with women all the time who I'm saying, okay, you need to park any phone action for an hour after breakfast. Like the first 90 minutes of the day, you do not want to be on that dopamine trail, because if you start that, that's the way the rest of the day is going to go. So we want to just get more regulated before we start that. And I promise you, that can be really transformative in terms of actually getting stuff done. So not starting the dopamine hunt is the best advice that I can give you in the morning. Back to nervous system and the sort of the cortisol and melatonin and dopamine, winding down, eating as early as you can in the evening. It's the way that our forefathers and mothers used to do it, and it's what the body naturally wants to do. And it does become a juggle, right? In midlife, if you're working at 7 o'clock at night, you're doing those the evening appointments. It does become a bit of a jigsaw puzzle when you're trying to pull things together. So thinking about what you could do that might give you some benefit, but isn't too far away from what you're doing. So I mentioned caffeine. Caffeine has a really long half-life, so it takes between 6 to 8 hours for half of the caffeine from your cup of tea or coffee to get out of the body. So if you've had a cup of tea at 4 in the afternoon and you're thinking you're going to bed at 11 o'clock at night, you will still have half of the caffeine in your system. So that is not great. We need to prioritize stress relief to reduce cortisol, and hands down, the quickest way to do it. And I've got all hypocrite, not hypocrite. I'm not a hypocrite. I'm a hypochondriac, and that's what I'm. I've got like a smart ring. I've got things on my phone, and I know hands down, and the research is with me, the quickest way to dial down stress is guided meditation, which is just somebody telling you to breathe in a certain way, bringing you back from, that time where you're thinking, oh, my car had an MOT. What about the shopping list? So it just bringing you back. The point is not to be perfect. The point is just to be reminded to come back. It takes 10 minutes and everyone has 10 minutes. That will make a massive difference to stress. So you can probably see at the bottom, there is a website, calm.com/calm health trial. They don't give me any money for saying, I think this is good. This will give you a month of their premium features. You can try it out, see whether you think it's a good idea. I'm not an ambassador for them. I have a lifetime membership that I've paid for because I think it's brilliant. They have something called the Daily Calm, which I love so much. It stops me having to think, what meditation do I want to do today? So wind down activities are really important. I said just a moment ago about stress relief being non-negotiable, but in terms of reducing cortisol, making you have a better sleep, keeping your brain sharp, reading, meditating, sleep stories, baths with Epsom salts, it's got extra magnesium, which is great for aches and pains and sleep. Those wind down activities need to be your go-to. They need to be your must do rather than I'll do it if I have time. Dimming the lights I mentioned seems weird, but it's very, very effective. And if you sleep, if you're like most of the population, it's not that dark outside. If you've got street lights and things like that, obviously it's nearly winter, so we get the dark, but in summer and in winter, to block out all lights, an eye mask is really, really good for having a really dark room. And I mentioned the screens. Absolutely. If you notice you are a procrastinator, where is the day gone, a bit addicted to your phone, screens at night, ditch them. Have a cut-off point when you don't then go back onto your phone. And also that time in the morning, and your body will really, really thank you for that. So just really, really bringing this to a close. And if you've got any questions, I'm really, really happy to answer them. But when it comes to food, if you don't plan, good luck. Everybody needs to plan their week to make sure that you've got the stuff that you want to eat, because there is no winging it, always ends in disaster. So eating more veg and protein is a good thing, minimizing refined stuff, cutting back. You don't have to cut out sugar, but cutting back is a good idea. Planning, like putting it in your diary, having an alarm for winding down, and not just your morning alarm to get you out of bed. That could be a good thing to do, to have that on your phone or wherever, where it does a little tinkle and you're like, right, Sandra, it's off now to read or to chill out. Maybe if the chill out is in watching Netflix, you can get yourself very relatively inexpensively a pair of those orange glasses from Amazon that can go even on top of regular glasses. Yes, you will look a bit weird and people in your family may mock you, but your job is not to care. And moving your body, ideally 30 minutes a day, and if you can make this a walk outside in the morning, then it's a win on every level imaginable. And just reverse engineering your day for the life that you want to have. So we do spend a lot of time sort of floating around, being decisive in our business, but actually the time is now to be looking at the whole of your life and thinking about what it is that you want for yourself, and also getting present to what isn't really working for you at the moment. So what isn't working, and being present to what you'd want to fix, and only then can you then start thinking about what you'd need to do to get there. So I've pulled all of these tips together, not so much on the nervous system because I'm just geeking out on that at the moment. But the QR code is going to give you, hopefully, the link to be able to download this free guide, which has got an overview of the kind of things that you can do that really matter in terms of your health at this stage of life. So apologies for running over a little bit. It has been a little bit of a whistle-stop tour, but I will stop my share now and come back and see whether anyone has got any questions for me.
That was amazing. Thank you so much for doing that. I'm sure that we will have lots of more questions potentially in the group when this gets posted. I can't see that there are any questions in the chat for the people that have actually joined us live, but I do have something. Let's just have a look. So you've actually covered almost everything that I was going to ask you. There was just one thing about hormone testing, which I think you mentioned a little bit about, that people can get testings, but did you also say that it wasn't something that was necessarily valuable early on?
Yes, so if you are in after 45, GPs don't do hormone testing. And this is because the estrogen output is so intermittent that it becomes irrelevant. So they don't tend to do it before because they're all like, well, Louise, how can you possibly be in perimenopause? You're not old enough. And then by the time you are old enough for them to take it seriously, the readings are so inaccurate. So many GPs won't do it. There is a test called the Dutch test, so nothing to do with Netherlands. It stands for dried urine. That can be useful because it's looking at the metabolites and it's looking at pathways. It can be useful for looking at, what's going on with your hormones. What I find the most useful test is a genetic test, so a DNA swab, and we can see what your body is programmed to do in terms of getting rid of hormones. If you are working with a private GP, they may look at testing, they might do regular testing to see how well their hormone therapy is for, if they're doing menopause hormone therapy, HRT, they may monitor you to see if they're not overloading you. But really that would need to be done in conjunction with how's your body getting rid of hormones.
Yeah, that
Um,
makes sense. Yeah.
Oh, I can see there's a question about ovarian
Yeah.
cancer, surgical menopause. Gosh, that's brutal. Will it affect testosterone levels on estrogen blockers? Where do you stand on plant estrogen? Right. Okay. Yes. So, for anyone else listening, they'll know that some cancers are estrogen sensitive, so they're driven by high levels of estrogen. And that's why you might have your estrogen levels blocked. The general consensus on plant-based estrogen, so any of those phytoestrogens like soy and things like that, the general consensus is that even though, because they are very weak sources, that the benefits outweigh any negatives. Um, your testosterone levels could be affected. The only way to know that is to actually get it measured. But one of the things I think for anyone who has a history of cancer, I would say almost certainly genetic testing so private genetic testing. It's unlikely, I would say it's very unlikely. Well, a mainstream doctor won't do it, but I do quite a lot of DNA testing. And the interesting thing is the problem with hormone driven cancers is not it's not the amount of estrogen, it's how it's getting out of your body. So it can be going down a wrong pathway, which is much more reactive, much more likely to result in cancers. So if you've got a history of them, that can be quite helpful. But I think it's really going to be about inflammation and making sure that you get that your detoxification systems are working properly, that you're eating the colourful veggies and eating a really balanced diet, and just keeping an eye on weight as well, because body fat is also a hormonal organ. It also makes estrogen. Sorry, that was a bit of a long and complicated answer.
It's a complicated system, though,
Mm.
kind of subject, isn't it? Yes. I
I
think
just
Annette
wanted to
wants
say
to say
thank
something.
you. That is so helpful. Honestly, thank you so much, because the jury has seemed to be out when it comes to my oncologist. I'm pescatarian, so I don't eat any meat. But I've stopped drinking soy milk and don't eat any tofu or anything because I was so scared that that was the wrong thing to do. Um, that's amazing advice. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, one of the things that is interesting when we look at the sort of the genetic pathways, um, if things are going down a less favorable pathway, let's say like the 4OH pathway is not a nice pathway. One of the ways of supporting your estrogen through not going down that pathway is things that support estrogen detoxification. So I'd say stinky foods, broccoli, cauliflower, any smelly veggies are brilliant. So anything that smells like garlic and onions and cabbage, bok choy, kale, all of those things that smell are really, really good for detoxification. So really good for hormone balance because they smell. They smell because they've got sulfur in them. So eating more of those foods regularly, a couple of servings a day, will probably be really helpful. And this is for everyone, but particularly for where a bit more of a support is needed for detoxification.
I think that's always the slight problem, isn't it, with when you're trying to be healthier, you're only looking at what you're cutting out. And actually, I sometimes think that we need to turn it on its table and think about what does my body need, and let's fill my
Mm.
body with all of that. And I certainly, when I was going through the menopause, that's what I did. And I found naturally that I wanted less alcohol, I wanted less sugar, I wanted, less anything, because it was almost like my constitution was changing because I was putting
Mm.
in all of the good stuff. And that actually leads on to my last question, which Jenny says, do you have any suggestions for menopause supplements? Now, I know you mentioned rosemary, which was amazing because we love to have essential oils around us. So I'm going to make
Mm.
sure I get some more rosemary. I've got rosemary in the garden, and I'm sure lots of people have as well. And the other one was lemon
Lemon balm.
lemon
So
balm.
lemon balm and rosemary are really good for calming. Valerian, I mean, it's very
Yeah.
individual because of course it depends on the individual person. I like, and not all nutritionists do, but I do like a multivitamin for covering all the bases. So making sure that you've got an adequate supply of B vitamins, which are really important for neurotransmitters, very important for the brain. Personally, my favorite brand is Nutri Advanced. They're not giving me a kettle or toaster for that, and you can buy directly from them. Another brand that I really like, and again, you can buy directly from them, are so just on the multivitamins from the Nutri Advance, they have all the B vitamins in a really available format that your body can absorb. Because sometimes the cheap ones that you can get from the supermarkets, the B vitamins need to be converted first, and some people aren't naturally very good at doing that. Another brand that I really like that do a lovely range of supplements is called Dr. Vegan. And they've just got a really nice menopause multi that they've brought out, which has got ashwagandha in it, which is an adaptogen, and it might have rhodiola in it as well, but it's definitely got ashwagandha, which is very good for calm. Plus, it's got all of the, the B vitamins and the things that you need. And they do if calm and just feeling a bit more chill is something that you need, they do a lovely one called Stay Calm as well. But I think it's very much individual. You want to make sure, ideally, that you know what your vitamin D levels are, and then you can make sure that you are either supplementing or you're getting out, or better still, booking a sunny holiday in the winter to get some of that vitamin D. They are some of the most important ones. And then it just depends what specific ailments that you might have.
And of course, we could go off track on a whole nother subject for at least another hour talking about vitamins.
We
Maybe
could,
we can do
yeah.
that at some point in the future. But thank you so much. There's no other questions in there. I'm sure I'll put you in the group if that's all right for a while. I'm sure that when people watch this video, they might have some questions. And we'll also put the links to everything where they can find you, follow you, and get more support and advice from you.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for inviting me to talk to your people today. And
Oh.
thank you everyone for listening in live or on the replay.
You are most welcome. Thank you so much.